So you're here because you're feeling it, right? That deep, almost indescribable pull inside of you. It's like you know you're meant for something greater. Maybe you can't quite put your finger on it, but you feel it. And let me tell you something right now, you're not crazy for thinking that. In fact, that feeling is one of the clearest signs that you've been chosen by God. Yes, you're not here by accident, and you're not watching this video by coincidence. Let's explore why. You see, we often think that life is just happening to us. But what if I told you that God has been orchestrating every moment, every challenge, every joy, and every setback to prepare you for something much, much bigger? That's the first sign. I call it the divine whisper. It's that small, quiet voice deep within you that tells you there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing. Maybe you've felt it in moments of stillness, or maybe it's hit you during your daily routine when suddenly, for no reason at all, you feel this overwhelming sense of purpose. But here's the thing most people miss: they ignore that voice. They think it's just wishful thinking or some random thought. But you're different. You're feeling it more intensely because God is trying to get your attention. That whisper is not just a vague idea, it's a call to action. It's a reminder that you were chosen for something greater, that you're not meant to live a life of mediocrity. So let me ask you something: are you listening to that whisper? Or are you drowning it out with the noise of the world?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Here's what you need to understand: when God chooses you for something greater, it doesn't always start with a loud, dramatic announcement. It starts small, almost like a seed planted deep in your soul. But over time, if you nurture it, if you pay attention to it, that seed grows. And eventually it will become so clear that you can no longer ignore it. So right now, I want you to stop what you're doing and think about the last time you felt that deep sense of calling. What was it trying to tell you? What dream, what vision, what purpose have you been pushing away because it seemed too big or too impossible? The second sign that you're meant for something greater is that you've faced challenges that seem unfair, almost disproportionate to what others around you are going through. It's like you've been tested more, pushed harder, and stretched further than anyone else. You might even have wondered, why me? Why do I have to go through this? But here's the truth: God doesn't choose the untested. He refines those He chooses through fire. Every challenge you faced, every obstacle that's been thrown in your path, has been preparing you for something incredible. Think about it. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Gold is refined by fire. And you are being shaped right now by the trials you're going through. What if the challenges you faced weren't meant to break you, but to build you? What if every hardship, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt was actually God's way of preparing you for the greatness He has in store for you? But here's where most people get stuck. They let the challenges define them instead of refine them. They get bitter instead of better. They start to believe that the hardship is the end of the story, instead of just a chapter in a much larger book. So let me ask you, are you letting your challenges define you? Or are you using them as fuel to push you toward the greatness that's waiting for you on the other side? You see, when you're chosen for something greater, the journey is not easy, but it's worth it. And here's why: the third sign that God has chosen you for something greater is that you have a vision, a dream that keeps coming back no matter how hard you try to ignore it. Maybe it's a vision of starting something new, a business, a ministry, an art project, or maybe it's a dream of impacting the world in a way that feels almost too big for you. But here's the kicker: that dream isn't going away, is it? No matter how much doubt you feel, no matter how many times you've tried to push it aside, it keeps resurfacing. That's because it's not your dream, it's God's dream for you. He placed it in your heart for a reason. And if He gave you the dream, He's also going to give you the resources, the connections, and the opportunities to make it happen. But you have to trust Him. You have to believe that you were chosen for this. So, let me ask you, what's the dream that keeps coming back to you, no matter how much time passes? What is the one thing that you can't shake, the one thing that feels bigger than you, but also feels like it was tailor-made for you? That's a sign. That's a sign that God has chosen you for something greater, and He's just waiting for you to step into it. Now, let's talk about the weight that comes with being chosen. Because here's the fourth sign that you're meant for something greater. It feels heavy. There's a weight to the responsibility that comes with being chosen. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's not always easy. When God chooses you, He doesn't just give you the dream and say, go for it. No, He expects you to grow into it. And growth is uncomfortable. It stretches you beyond your limits. It pushes you to places you never thought you'd go. And sometimes it feels like too much. Have you ever felt that? Like you're carrying something so big, so heavy, that you're not sure you can handle it. That's exactly where God wants you to be. Because here's the thing, if you could carry it on your own, it wouldn't be a God-sized assignment. If the dream you have, if the calling you feel, doesn't scare you a little bit, then it's probably not from God. When God chooses you for something greater, He gives you a vision that's so big, so impossible, that you have no choice but to rely on Him. But here's the beautiful part: the weight you're feeling isn't meant to crush you. It's meant to strengthen you. It's meant to remind you that you weren't chosen because you're perfect or because you have all the answers. You were chosen because God sees your potential. He sees what you can't see yet, and He's going to walk with you every step of the way. So, let me ask you, are you willing to carry the weight of being chosen? Are you willing to step into something that feels bigger than you, knowing that God is going to provide everything you need along the way? Because here's the truth: the weight of responsibility is not a burden, it's a blessing. It's a sign that God trusts you with something important, something that's going to impact not just your life, but the lives of countless others. But here's where most people falter. They see the weight as a reason to quit. They think, this is too hard. I must not be cut out for this. But what if the weight you're feeling is actually a sign that you're exactly where you're supposed to be? What if the challenges, the obstacles, the difficulties are all part of the process of shaping you into the person you need to become in order to fulfill your calling? The fifth and final sign that you're meant for something greater is that you feel a sense of urgency. You know what I'm talking about. It's that feeling deep down that time is running out, that you need to act now. It's not anxiety, it's a divine sense of purpose. It's like you know that you were put on this earth for a reason, and you don't have time to waste. You're driven, not by fear, but by a deep sense of responsibility to fulfill the mission that God has entrusted to you. But here's where it gets tricky. It's easy to confuse urgency with impatience. You see, when God gives you a sense of urgency, it's not a call to rush or force things to happen. It's a call to prepare, to be ready, so that when the opportunity comes, you can step into it fully. But most people, when they feel that urgency, they start to panic. They think they have to make everything happen on their own. But that's not how God works. He doesn't expect you to do it all by yourself. He's already laid out the path. He's already opened the doors. Your job is to stay ready, to trust the process, and to move when He tells you to move. So, let me ask you, are you mistaking God's urgency for impatience? Are you trying to rush the process instead of trusting that everything is happening in divine timing? Because here's the truth: when you're chosen for something greater, the timing is just as important as the calling. God's timing is perfect, and if you try to rush it, you might miss the very thing He's been preparing for you all along. Now, let's get real here. Trusting the process is one of the hardest things to do when you feel like you're meant for something greater. It's easy to get caught up in the when and the how. When is it going to happen? How am I going to get there? But here's the thing: God's plan is never rushed, and it's never late. It's always on time. But that means you have to be patient. And patience doesn't mean sitting around doing nothing. It means actively preparing for what's coming. Think about it like this: if you were an athlete training for the Olympics, you wouldn't just sit back and wait for the games to come, right? No, you would train every single day, even if the games were years away. Why? Because when the moment comes, you want to be ready. It's the same with your calling. God has chosen you for something greater, and right now, He's preparing you for that moment. Every challenge, every lesson, every delay is part of your training. It's shaping you, refining you, so that when the opportunity comes, you're not just ready, you're more than ready. But here's where many people get stuck. They get frustrated with the process. They want the results now, but they're not willing to go through the preparation. Let me ask you something: are you willing to trust the process, even when you can't see the results yet? Are you willing to keep showing up, day after day, knowing that God is preparing you for something greater, even if it hasn't happened yet? Because here's the truth: God is never in a hurry, but He's always on time. And when you're meant for something greater, the preparation is just as important as the destination. You can't skip the process. You can't shortcut your way to greatness. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes faith. And most importantly, it takes trust. But here's the beautiful part: when you trust the process, when you surrender to God's timing, you start to realize that the journey is just as important as the destination. Every step you take, every lesson you learn, is part of the greater plan. You're not just waiting for something to happen, you're becoming the person you need to be in order to fulfill your calling. So, let me ask you, are you willing to trust the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening? Are you willing to believe that God is working behind the scenes, aligning everything perfectly for the right moment? Because here's the thing: when the moment comes, you won't have time to prepare. You'll need to be ready. But here's where most people fall short: they give up too soon. They get tired of waiting, and they walk away just before the breakthrough happens. Don't let that be you. Don't let impatience rob you of the greatness that's waiting for you. You've come too far to quit now. You've endured too much to give up before the finish line. Let's talk about the moment of realization. This is the moment when everything clicks, when all the signs, all the challenges, and all the preparation come together, and you finally see clearly why God has chosen you for something greater. This is the moment when you step into your calling, and everything starts to make sense. But here's the thing: this moment doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's the result of all the work, all the faith, and all the trust you've put in along the way. When you finally step into your calling, it's not going to feel like a random event. It's going to feel like the culmination of everything you've been through. All the pain, all the struggles, all the waiting, it's all been leading to this. And when you reach that moment, you'll realize that it was all worth it. You'll realize that God's plan was perfect all along, even when you couldn't see it. But here's what you need to understand: the moment of realization is not the end, it's the beginning. When you finally step into your calling, that's when the real work begins. That's when you start to see the impact of the greatness you were chosen for. But here's the beautiful part: by the time you reach that moment, you'll be ready. You'll have the strength, the wisdom, and the faith to carry the weight of the responsibility that comes with being chosen. So, let me ask you, are you ready for that moment of realization? Are you ready to step into the greatness that God has been preparing you for? Because here's the truth: you were chosen for this. You were meant for something greater. And now, it's time to step into it. But here's the final question I want to leave you with. Will you answer the call? Will you embrace the fact that God has chosen you for something greater, even when it feels overwhelming? Because here's the truth: the world needs what you have to offer. God didn't choose you by accident. He chose you because He knows that you have the potential to change the world in ways that only you can. So, are you ready to step into that calling? It's time to stop doubting, stop waiting, and start stepping into the greatness that's already inside of you. You were chosen for something greater. Now, it's time to live like it.